Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Isfahan. After 12 days of missile strikes, assassinations, and air raids, the fighting has come to a pause. Well, at least for now. Iran and Israel have agreed to a U.S.-brokered ceasefire, and all sides are claiming victory. But violations are already being reported. The conflict began with Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure and top commanders. Then the U.S. entered the fray. Over the weekend, President Trump ordered airstrikes on Iran's Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites. Iran promised swift retaliation and delivered. A barrage of missiles slammed into Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, marking Tehran's boldest strike yet on U.S. forces. But just hours later, Trump took to social media to declare a ceasefire had been reached. Iran's top security council claimed it had forced Israel to stand down. Israel, in turn, said it had achieved its objective, crippling Iran's nuclear capacity. Global markets surged on the news. World leaders welcomed the truce, but few are calling it a peace. For more, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Mark Kimmitt. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State. From Ankara, Suay Nilhan Acikalin, an associate professor at Ankara's Haci Bayram Veli University, and from Doha, Ali Bakir, an assistant professor at Qatar University. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I want to open by talking about the U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. It was just over the weekend, and so much has happened. It feels like almost like it happened during another war. But rather than talk about the minute-by-minute events, I do want to concentrate on the big picture. Mark, a big strike on Fordow. When you look at that strike, especially from a military perspective, what did it accomplish? And has Trump been able to keep his promise? Is he handling everything from a satisfactory perspective? In your perspective, is it satisfactory?
Yeah, Yusuf, I think there have been many descriptions of the attack, but I think the most descriptive and the most accurate was given by the chairman, General Kane, who said the facility was significantly damaged. Now, having said that, we really don't know what level of damage that includes. We do a formal battle damage assessment after every time we do these types of attacks. They could take days, they could take hours, but in this case, I actually think it's going to take a long time since we really can't visualize anything more than a number of holes in the ground. So the United States is going to start collecting communications intelligence, satellite intelligence, human intelligence, digital intelligence. So they're going to try to fuse that all into an intelligence picture to be able to tell the president in some period of time their estimate of what was happened. But I think most people recognize if the facility was not destroyed, it certainly was taken offline.
Mm-hmm. Suay, were you surprised by the attack? I mean, there was a lot of talk about it, but did you think that Trump would pass the threshold and directly militarily engage Iran with a direct U.S. strike? And what's going to be the fallout of this? Is the U.S. now a belligerent to the war, or was this just one strike and out?
Thank you, Yusuf. Actually, I'm not surprised because there is a clear pressure from the Israeli side since the unofficial negotiation has been started in last 1.5 months. And after they attacked Iran on the 13th of June, it's clear that there's an expectation from the Israeli side to see the concrete major attack from the United States to Iran. But on the other hand, I think it's just a one-time attack to just bringing the Iran to come back to the peace negotiation, or at least at some point to negotiate with Israel or the United States again. And I think what we've seen today is also shows that Donald Trump at the end of the day doesn't want to be part of the systematic conflict or the mutual violence in the Middle East, as well as the Iranian and Israel conflict.
Mm-hmm. So Ali, in retaliation for these strikes, the Iranians hit the U.S. base in Qatar. Interesting choice, Qatar. Qatar being we can call an ally, I guess, of Iran, or a friendly country of Iran that they would select to hit an American asset there. How did the Qataris react to this strike against U.S. assets in their country? And do you think that this is enough? This is case closed between Iran and the United States, or will this tit for tat continue?
I think it was a staged attack allowed to conduct or execute this operation to save its face and open a path for the next step, which is the negotiations after wrapping up the military operations. I think that the main parties were aware of this operation ahead. They were ready. The Al-Udeid airbase was evacuated a couple of days ago and was secured. And the Qataris also did very well on the military defense, security, and foreign policy levels in parallel with this hit, intercepting 11 out of 12 missiles and leaving one to hit an empty space. Of course, the Qataris strongly condemned the Iranian assault on their sovereignty and violating their airspace, and they clearly also said that they retain the right to retaliate according to international law. And it was clear that they didn't accept the Iranian hit from this perspective. But at the same time, I think that they also, given that they vote to continue the mediation and their de-escalatory role, I think that they managed to secure in return the credit to reach, if I may say, the escalatory situation between Israel and Iran. And this was quite well. I think also the hit triggered wide support for Qatar in the Gulf and beyond, which is an opportunity to strengthen the Qatar position diplomatically, militarily. And also Trump thanked Qatar openly and the Emir of Qatar for his efforts to de-escalate the situation and taking the whole situation to the next level, which is the negotiations. Having said this, of course, there is always a possibility to sabotage whether the current situation or the negotiations, and this possibility comes mainly from the Israeli actor because the Israelis always bet on their military power, which is their strength, and currently there is no one to stand against. The U.S. can pressure them to stop their madness.
Mark, with Trump's decision, what level of strategic autonomy is there? I mean, was this strike directly serving U.S. interests, or was this something that Israel really wanted, influenced the Americans to get on board?
Well, we've got to understand this was a one-off threat. The fact is that nobody else could have taken out the Fordow facility except for the United States because it is a deep and hard target. Nobody else had the bombs and the precision able to do it. So if it had to be done, it could only be done by the Americans. Now, is this for American interests? Of course, it's for the world's interest. The last thing the world wants to see is a nuclear-armed Iran. And so this was not an issue of being a puppet of Israel and Israeli interests, but it's the whole notion that if you want to end or prevent the weaponization of enriched uranium by the Iranians, which has been the policy of every president since the nuclear discovery that Iran was on the way to developing a bomb. Every president has said, we will not permit Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So it only makes sense that when there's an opportunity to take out their capability on a facility that only the Americans could take out, that it was done as a separate operation away from the Israeli campaign.
Suay, so Mark's saying that this was good for the world, preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. When you're sitting there looking at the developments from Turkey, is it good that Turkey's neighbor doesn't get a nuclear weapon? And is this positive for the region, keeping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon?
Well, Yusuf, it's a tough question. Mark clearly mentioned that the American position for many years. And I think it's important to remember that in the negotiation process since the beginning of 2000 and the 2010, we all remember that the Tehran declaration, which the all parts seems to be agreed on, that the minimizing the Iranian nuclear working, and at the same time basically lifting some of the embargoes towards the Iran. So in this case, it is not easy to answer that question, but obviously Turkish foreign policy has a clear stance regarding to contribute to the regional peace as well as the global peace. In this case, Turkey generally has a very clear position to keep the all actors both in the region and the global scale not to get in conflict in an unnecessary way, but at the same time focusing on the more humanitarian and the conflict solution making position in this respect. And I think last one, we should also remember that if the all parties of the negotiation process can manage to back into the negotiation desk, how it will be look like, it's also be interesting question mark for everyone.
Iran's nuclear program, is it going to continue or is it going to abandon the program, just looking at it and saying, you know what, this is too costly?
Look, the Iranians have spent $500 billion on the nuclear program so far, trying to convince the world that it's a peaceful program. In fact, it was not. And I think that it will be very, very hard for them to try or even to think of reviving this program given their current situation. I think the Iranians will still be under pressure if they don't reach a serious agreement in the next phase of the negotiations. So I don't think they have an option right now, and I don't think they will be allowed to establish a nuclear, military nuclear program in the future. Having said this, since the so-called Iranian nuclear threat is out of the equation at the current moment, all the region should focus on the necessity to strip Israel from its nuclear weapons. It's by no calculation that Israel should be allowed to keep those nuclear powers as the only state in the region with these nuclear. There's no sense. It doesn't make any sense. So if there is a real will for keeping the Middle East clear of nuclear weapons, the Israeli nuclear program should be next. This mission should be done by the US and the international community, but the regional pressure should be increased during the coming months to highlight the fact that as long as Israel is waging wars in the region, as long as it has a nuclear weapon, as long as it is not allowing the Palestinians to retake their rights or establish their states, then Israel will be the main problem in the coming period, given that Iran is out of the equation at the current moment.
Mark, the Strait of Hormuz, very, very key strategic waterway. So there was talk about closure by the Iranian parliament. Do you see Iran taking steps to leverage that access, especially with its negotiations with the Americans and the Israelis, if there's going to be direct talks, obviously, between the Iranians and the Israelis? Is that something that they might move to do to raise oil prices and pressure countries like the United States?
Well, they certainly have that option, but I think that if they're looking at getting into a war with the United States, then they will do that. It is clear that the United States and its coalition partners will not allow the Strait of Hormuz to be closed to international commercial traffic. The Strait of Hormuz has a significant amount of international waters. If Iran wants to close international waters, that puts them very much in the same position as the Houthis in the Red Sea. So we're in active combat against the Houthis until the ceasefire. And I have very little doubt that if the Iranians try to close the Strait of Hormuz, that will be interpreted as an act of war, and the responses will be made accordingly.
Suay, I want to ask you about the OIC Summit in Istanbul that was very recently held. Now, out of the summit, there was a declaration, and inside of that, the general opinion was, the consensus was that Israel needs to be stopped immediately, that Iran needs to negotiate a deal over its dispute with the nuclear program. And again, Erdogan offered mediation between the Americans and the Iranians as well. Was the declaration a success? Was the summit a success?
Thank you, Yusuf. Actually, I had a chance to be part of the OIC summit in Istanbul as well. I think the remarkable point that you mentioned for the general atmosphere in the OIC was quite, in the first day, was a little bit, how can I say, interesting due to the ongoing conflict between the Iran and Israel. I think in general sense, the last day and the whole day discussions was successful. And I think there are also important points they mentioned regarding the both Gaza conflict, anti-Muslim sentiments in the different parts of the world. And as you said, that the Turkey and the President Erdogan also offered the position that they can be part of the whole negotiation process between the United States and the Iranian sides. One more thing that I found importantly remarkable, this is the OIC meeting in a very hard times that has been making in a summit in the Turkey. But everyone has at least a kind of the willingness to keep the multilateralism as much as possible to solve the regional and the global issues.
So, Ali, it's been about 2 weeks since the fighting started. When you view Israel and Iran's capabilities and capacity that they've shown, what surprised you the most?
Nothing actually. In fact, Israeli they won this round of escalation at the first couple of days, and they put the Iranians in a very critical situation. They had only two options: either to call for the stop of escalation and go for negotiations, or they escalate and risk pushing the U.S. to join Israel, thus resulting in toppling the regime and destroying Iran. So I think that the Israelis took the Iranians by surprise in the first couple of days. I think that right now, the Iranians want to de-escalate, like most of the regional countries, and the U.S. also has an interest in de-escalating and going back to the negotiation table. However, I'm afraid that the Israelis are still, and they probably would always consider the sabotage options. We should not forget that they also sabotaged the previous round of negotiations that were supposed to take place in Oman just 2 days from the escalation. And this is when the U.S. should send strong message to Israel and Netanyahu's government that they are not allowed to sabotage the process, and they should keep silent. In fact, Netanyahu should not stay in power after all this escalation in the region. It's not only Iran. I mean, look at Israel's policies in Gaza, in West Bank, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran, now in the Gulf, and probably if was not under pressure, he will continue to other countries. So I think that the risk comes first at the current moment from the Israelis. I just heard that President Trump also gave a public warning for the Israeli Air Force not to bomb Iran at the current moment. I think this is a good sign, and also it shows that both Iran and the US has an interest to escalate, but the Israelis are acting like a raw nation, and they should be stopped at this point.
Mark, you've served as a general in the United States Armed Forces, and you've served in the region as well, so you're no stranger to Iranian proxies and Shiite militia. When you look at the zenith of their power, probably the hottest part of the Iraq and Syrian civil wars, to post-Israel, Iran tit for tat, how much has their capacity diminished, and do you expect that proxy network to still be intact?
I think I can tell you exactly when the Iranian-backed proxies hit their zenith, and that was on January 19th, 2020. That was the day before the United States targeted and killed Qasem Soleimani. That was a profound blow to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, who had been the backbone of Iran's foreign operations and the interlocutor and the controller of all of the proxy networks, which led to dumb mistakes being made by those proxy networks, in particular October 7th. Since October 7th, Israel has stripped away the power of those militias. Hezbollah is down, but not out. Hamas is down, but not out. The Houthis are pretty well down. Syria, the proxies are gone. But more important for Israel, the ring of fire that had been established around Israel, that 200,000 warhead deterrent that told Israel, if you attack Iran, we will, as was said about the Persians at Thermopylae, we will blot out the sky with our missiles. But once the October 7th after effects were felt by Israel, they started methodically chipping away at not only those proxies, but at those missiles. And had those missiles still been in place, there would have been no way for the Israelis to attack Iran because of the response that would have come from that proxy network. Mm-hmm. So the proxy networks are down. They're certainly not out. But like the Iranian nuclear program, they've been set back for years and years.
Mm-hmm. Suay, if this ceasefire holds, where does Iran and Israel go from here? What's their next move? What's next on their agenda?
Yusuf, this is the toughest question. I mean, it's not easy to say something that these two actors came up with the directly negotiation talks, but only we will see, the world knows. But I'm expecting to at least, if there will be a long-term ceasefire will be happen between Israel and Iran, maybe there will be another optimism can be arise to be talked again. The Iranian nuclear negotiation will start soon in a multilateral perspective together with the European members as well.
Mm-hmm. Ali, where does the region go from here? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about finally creating a regional security architecture. Could this be the wake-up call where actors in the region are like, we really need to find a way to not solve the problem, but avert the problem, stop it before it begins? And is this something that the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Turks, Iraqis, Syrians, Jordanians, Lebanese, is this something where they could come together on?
It's hard to answer this question. Most probably no, but let me tell you something. I think that at the current moment, Iran is very weak, very undermined politically and militarily. And I think there is a positive angle from this perspective. I think the Iranians will be more humble right now. They will, given their situation, they will try to cooperate with the regional countries, especially in the Gulf and the Levant, and they will try to secure support from the region at first. And this might open a window of opportunity to strengthen the regional cooperation and work seriously on addressing the serious issues, whether security-wise or economy-wise. Having said this, I think that without solving the Palestinian issue, we should not expect any stability in the region, and we should always expect an Israeli escalation. Israel only strength comes from waging wars and from using its military strength. And in order to do this, they will continue to make problems in the region. I am hearing lately the term peace through strength. If they think that imposing peace on the region would achieve them what they want, I think they are very wrong, because ultimately the public anger will explode at some point sooner or later, and at that point there will be no one to protect Israel from the implications. We should not forget that without the US and Western support, Israel couldn't sustain any kind of medium or long-term engagement in a war with any of the regional countries, regardless how weak you might say, but still Israel's strengths come from outside the region, and the US is not will not be standing by Israel forever. At the end of the day, they have their own challenges, and they have rising China, they have problems internally, they have economic and political problems, and having a huge military could at a certain point help you, but it's not a tool to solve political and security problems. So the Israelis, unless they know that they should pay a price for a real peace, and Palestinians should have their own rights and own states, I think Israel would be in a very bad position in the future, regardless of the current battle that occurred with Iran or any other country.
Mark, Suay, Ali, thanks for joining me and helping me unpack this issue. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.